Hey, how you doing? Brian Kane, host of the Team Allie, Beth, Allman Real Estate Mental Performance Podcast, here with Erin Young Garrett. Keith Conlon maybe will be joining us at some point in an episode near in the future. Erin and I currently are breaking down the book, The Power of Moments by Dan and Chip Heath. And today we're talking about chapters 5 and 6. And if you missed our previous 3 episodes, we kind of did an overview of the book, broke down chapters 1 and 2, chapters 3 and 4, and again today we're going through 5 and 6. So Erin, chapter 5 in The Power of Moments, they talk about the concept of tripping over the truth, and getting to a point where you realize the truth about something, where you realize, that moment of insight as it comes to you, right? As we're talking about insight in kind of an introduction, when we talk about insight, it's tripping over the truth and stretching for insight. So talk to us about tripping over the truth as a moment of insight and maybe how that connects to the real estate profession.
Well, in this chapter, it was, one of the things that was eye-opening to me was the part about tripping over the truth and getting the insight from real self-discovery, and figuring out that this is what you're doing and it's getting you this result and it's no different than this other similar thing. And then you have this, eye-opening moment, which is the truth. And that's how you start to change whatever it is that you're doing. So whether in real estate, it's, if you're taking on a client and starting the process, like, for example, we recently had an agent that would go into a listing appointment and now she's lost 3 in a row. And so, we had a meeting and we were asking about what do you think it is about when you go in, what do you do? And she told me her process. Well, she'd walk in and she would start telling the client, everything they needed to do to get the house ready for showings, right? Common sense. That sounds like, yeah, that's what I would do as a listing agent. But instead of taking the moment and figuring out all the positives about the house, all the things she would be selling about the house, because the client was taking it as, here's all the things you think are wrong with my house. Mm-hmm. So when they'd have another agent come in, the other agent was like, this is great. We'll have to do a few things here and there, but I'm not going to worry about that now. Let's talk about what your plans are moving you forward. Whereas this agent was like, just going ahead and, she was sort of skipping the first step and, sort of telling him, overwhelming him with what the client thought of was a negative. And we start talking about that, sure enough, next listing appointment, she thought about what she was selling and held back on what needed to be done first and save that for the next appointment after she had the signed listing agreement. So, that was sort of an interesting that it, that she didn't realize she was doing it. She thought she was being helpful.
It's interesting. And there's a, because there's a part in this book on page 100 where they talk about a facilitator that went into a very dirty situation and had to help people kind of change their behaviors. And the facilitator was trained only in the ability to ask questions, not to offer advice or opinions. And as somebody who coaches people for a living, as I'm reading that, I go, man, I fall into that behavior of offering advice and offering opinions versus asking the questions and trying to guide people maybe to the answer. It may take more time up front, but it's the only way for long-term change is for someone to own that answer that they get to. And it sounds like with the agent that you were just mentioning, they came to kind of that same realization of talking to the client about what their goals were, what their vision was, what they enjoyed about the house. And even though the agent could then still offer some suggestions to make the showing look better, what they could do, they just provided the opportunity for the listing or for the owner to maybe get to some of that realization and then agree to make that customer or that client even feel better about their situation.
Right. And, also, with this, it's that self-insight that they talk about that causes the change, that initiates the change in the person. And like if you're an agent representing a buyer, most agents don't take the client to the best house first because they know they're not going to buy the first one they see. They have to see the market and see what's going on. And then you sort of guide them into, realizing like, you know, here you might guide them into saying like, you know what, I thought I needed a downstairs master, but an upstairs master isn't really the breaking point that I thought it was. It isn't, I think I can do an upstairs master now that we've seen, several houses with it, and and the house does live this way. And, but it's, if you just, as sort of that mentor or, person that's guiding them, if you walk in and say, look, here's the list of criteria you gave me, and here's a house that matches every criteria, and then they don't want to buy it. Well, it's because they didn't self-discover the insight. And I thought that was so powerful.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting too in the page on page 108 where they talked about I think it was the University of Virginia, where they offered they offered professors a course in course design. And the questions they started by asking the professors were, 3 to 5 years from now, my students still know, or they are still able to do, or they still find value in, right? And I think as a teacher, a former, adjunct college professor of sports psychology, I used to I wouldn't design lessons with the idea in mind of like, hey, 3 to 5 years from now, what do I want my students to know? I would design a lesson, say, oh, okay, I got 13-week semester and we got 3 hours a week for 13 weeks. What do I want to cover in those kind of 13 classes? I wouldn't start with the bigger question of what do I want my students to know? And I think as a real estate agent, you could say 3 to 5 years from now, what is it I want my client to still say about me? 3 to 5 years from now, what do I want my client to still feel about our experience together? And I think if you ask yourself questions like that, what do you think some of the answers would be that agents would say if they were asked the question, 3 to 5 years from now, I want my clients to say?
I would hope they would say something about the customer service that they were provided, about the availability that they provided for their client, something along those lines. What they're still able to do. I hope it's something in regards to the sustainability of their business and their ability to have continued it and grown it over the 3 to 5 years, and something they still find value in. I would hope people look at it and say that their expertise has grown as they've grown as an agent.
That they're still connected, right? That they're still, that when you think about real estate, the first thing you think of is the agent who sold you the house 3 to 5 years ago, because there's still some kind of connection. You still get a Christmas card or a holiday card. You still get like we talked about moments, you still get a house anniversary gift or a house anniversary call or something every year to say, hey, it's your 2-year anniversary. How is everything going? And it's just in that routine and that calendar that's part of your process as an agent, so that 3 to 5 years from now, they might say, man, every year I hear from my agent on my anniversary of my house, did you know that there's house buying anniversaries? Like, I've never even heard of that before until we started doing this breakdown. But what a great idea.
And there's 2 groups that know about it, the agent and the people that bought or sold, or I guess really bought. And that's it. It's not like other family members are celebrating a house anniversary. They don't even think about that. But there's only 2, the person that bought and the agent that helped them buy.
Right. And if you're
it's the only people that ever know about it.
And if you're at a deeper level with your client and hey, what type of bottle of champagne or what type of bottle of wine do they enjoy? Like, and every year you show up at the door with the bottle of wine and the bow on it and a card that says happy anniversary. Like, as a client, I'm never going to forget that. And when I want to go sell my house, who I'm going to call.
Exactly.
And so let's say you're there for 10 years and they get you a $50 bottle of wine every year. They've made a $500 investment to get your business 10 years from now, which is, you're going to make a lot more than $500 back when you sell that house.
Right. Exactly. It was on page 106 where he talked about you can't appreciate the solution until you appreciate the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And that was what that self-insight was so powerful.
Yeah. But I think so many times, like, identifying what's the problem we're trying to solve. And I think, when you're in marketing or you're in sales, that's really what it is it's problem solution, right? So when you're going to try to get a house listing, what's the biggest problem that the person who's making a decision on who they're going to list the house with, What's the biggest problem that they have? Is it how much the house is going to get listed for? Is it how quickly it can be sold? Is it the availability of the listing agent? Is it the feedback from the listing agent that's going to help them to get the house sold more quickly? Maybe they don't want to sell the house for a while. They're being proactive. Maybe they want to finish out a school year, whatever it is. So being able to quickly identify what is the biggest problem or need that my client has, and how do I provide that solution, versus going and thinking we have the solution when we haven't uncovered the problem.
That's so true.
Stretching for insight, chapter number 6, Erin. If we take a look through that, I thought it was interesting. They shared a couple examples. One woman who opened up a bakery. She was a baker, and then she went to open her own bakery, and it failed in 18 months. And she said, I realized I'm great when I work for others because they rely on me, but working for myself, I'm a terrible boss. So I think so many times people will say, oh, you should go open your own spot. Well, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you just want to bake. You don't want to have to run a budget and hire and do all the other things that come along with being a business owner versus somebody who's an operator and has a specific job they're passionate about.
And on this, applying it to real estate, one of the things that people often ask me is, how do people do everything so well? How do they do the social media, the marketing, the print marketing, the being in front of the clients, the networking so well? And, you're only going to do well at what your niche is. So if your niche is open houses, go do open houses. And that's where you'll make all your business and sustain your business. If your house is social media, if your niche is social media, really focus on your niche. And I thought this was such a great example because, she realized she stretched herself and she went out and opened her own bakery. But then what her reality was that I can't even, here I am working for myself, doing everything, that I'm overworked and now I hate it.
Yeah.
Because it's always, Tom Brady has a great quote, and it says, everybody wants to be where you are until they realize what it takes to be there. And it's so true. You always look at really people that you think are really successful, and then you start realizing what it is that's there. Our top agents love them to death, but they're single agents that don't have families. They're not raising kids. They're 100% focused on their business, and they're excellent at it. They're great at it. And I have great respect for them. But, a lot of my agents that are raising 3 or 4 kids, are saying, why am I not here? I'm like, because when they're working, when you're taking your kids to dinner and at the soccer game and this and that, and that's the difference. So you got to, it's a reality of accept where you are and then go be good at that place.
Yeah, it's true. That's the truth there, right? And having a 5-month-old who just rolled over for the first time back to front yesterday. Let's go, Carolyn. But doubling down on your strengths. Identify what you're good at, double down on those, and position yourself in a place where your strengths come to fruition. Instead of spending so much time leveling up my weaknesses, let's double down on my strengths and make that what is most, prolific and out there for people to see, because then they're seeing the best side of you. The one thing on page 117 I thought maybe is the best line in the entire book is it says, action leads to insight more than insight leads to action. Like, you have to stay busy as an agent, right? You have got to learn to fail. And you've got to learn to learn from those failures and move forward. Action leads to insight more than insight leads to action. He says, learning who we are, what we want, and what we're capable of is a lifelong process. And they give the example in there I thought was tremendous of Sarah Blakely. And one of the coolest things I've ever heard is that Sarah Blakely, when she and her siblings would have dinner with their father, the father would ask them, what did you guys fail at this week? In a quote from the book, it says, if we had nothing to tell him, he'd be disappointed. The logic seems counterintuitive, but it worked beautifully. He knew that many people become paralyzed by the fear of failure. They're constantly afraid of what others will think if they don't do a great job, and as a result, take no risks. My father wanted us to try everything and feel free to push the envelope. His attitude taught me to define failure is not trying something I want to do. Let me say that again. His attitude taught me to define failure is not trying something I want to do instead of not achieving the right outcome. So the key thing here is like when you seek out situations where you might fail, failure loses some of its menace. You become inoculated against it. Like you get told no 9 times or 900 times, and it's like, good, the next one's going to be a yes. And you keep moving forward. I mean, anybody who's working in real estate, anybody who's working in sales, being able to change your relationship with failure is massive mindset shift. It's only going to help you be more successful. Unpack that for us a little bit, Erin.
That was such a great lesson. And I don't know how many times I've heard you say action leads to insight. And it leads you forward. And as I was telling you earlier, I remember the first time I had a good friend I was working for, had a listing with them, took them 4 offers. They never would sign one. And then they ended up firing me as their listing agent. It was the first time it ever happened, and actually only time. But I came back to the office and I ran into Allie, Beth, the owner of our firm, founder of our firm. And I told her about it. And she said, send flowers, write a note saying, thank you for the opportunity, and move on. And sort of, so what? And it's, it was that I was sort of, at first I was taken back, like, do you know what that meant to me? Do you know what that kind of failure meant to me, and all these things? And, but I did it. I wrote a thank you note and had some flowers delivered. And, and then sure enough, I moved on to the next thing because I had to go make money somewhere else. So, but it was just that. And, even in this, he is the psychologist that, was a doctor that a patient had asked him, to spend 15 minutes or spend some time with them. And he said, I'll be back in 15 minutes. And that 15 minutes, the client had committed suicide, but his mentor took the doctor and got the details and went over it. And then he said, change clothes and let's go see the next client. Let's go see the next patient. And, in the moment he talks about being in shock on that, but what it did is, from a mentor, is he pushed him forward and led him more into a place. And in my position here as the sales manager, that's one of the things that it makes me think about is, where, just like we talked about, double down on your strengths, and then also look at something where you can push yourself forward. And if you fail, you fail, but at least, it will move you forward in another direction that you will find success.
Yeah, I love that. And then if you look at kind of the summary of the chapter, right, it talks about the formula for mentorship, which is what we just referenced with Sarah Blakely's father, with the psychologist, his mentor, with Allie, Beth, with you, is the formula for mentorship that leads to self-insight is high standards, assurance, direction, and support. And when we have those things as a leader, we have high standards, we have assurance, we have direction that we provide, and support that we provide. I think we're able to help create some of those moments of insight. And one of the things that they finished the chapter with here is that the promise of stretching, trying something hard, going beyond what you're used to, it's not success, it's learning. And I think that's the mentality maybe we wrap up this chapter with, is in life there's winners and learners, and those who continue to learn and continue to get the insight from learning because they're pushing the envelope and trying new things, those are the people that are ultimately going to win in the marathon known as being a real estate agent.
And I love that. My mom always said to us growing up, keep yourself interesting. And, always find something that you can go learn more about and explore. Just keep yourself interesting, and others will be interested in you, and you won't have a problem figuring out what to do.
Awesome. Erin, good breakdown. Next week, we're going to move into moments of pride and going to break down chapters. Is going to be 7 and 8 next week, where we're talking about moments of pride, and the 2 chapters in there underneath creating those moments of pride. Actually, there's 3 of them. Chapters 7, 8, and 9 are recognizing others, multiplying milestones, and practicing courage. Sounds like a chapter designed for a mental performance coach. Can't wait for it. Until then, let's not count the days. Let's make the days count. It's a great day to be with Team Allie, Beth. Erin, thank you for being here.
Thank you.